Welcome to Serve News. I'm your host. Mark Carney makes a live press conference from Rome. Nobody really knows why or what he's doing there, but it's failing at best. He's had 10 minutes of recorded time with leaders, about 3 minutes each, if that's good enough for you. Here's Mark Carney himself. I'll let him take it away from here.
Privilege for me to represent Canada at the inaugural Mass for Pope Leo XIV. It's a source of inspiration for Canadians, for Catholics, and for people around the world. The message of peace, the message of love that he emphasized, but an active peace, not peace as an absence of conflict, but peace as something that we seek. Now, in parallel to this event, I had the opportunity to meet with a number of world leaders, a number of partners, G7 partners, including the host here in Italy, Prime Minister Meloni, President Mattarella, Chancellor Merz this morning. I'll be meeting with Vice President Vance later today. A number of other conversations with world leaders. And the main message I would take away from that is that I will leave Rome tomorrow morning, more convinced than ever that Canada has what the world wants, and we seek to follow the values that the world respects. So there's a tremendous opportunity for Canada to help lead a world that is being reshaped to the advantage of Canadians and, in the spirit of today's proceedings, to the advantage of all in the world. With that, I'll be pleased to take your questions. My faith, the only influence it has in terms of my political life is the fact of my political life. In other words, I feel because of that responsibility, a sense of service, which is one of the reasons why I put myself forward. It does not have an influence on the politics, or the policies, I should say, the policies that the government follows. There'll be a budget in the fall. In the short term, it's a very short parliamentary session that is coming up. The speech from the throne is on the 27th, as people know. The House is due to rise under the House's rules by the 20th of June, so it's really 3 weeks. We have some very clear priorities, which, as you know from following those who followed the campaign, those who followed my remarks, those who followed my opening press conference, would include the federal government taking all the steps it can to help create one Canadian economy out of 13.
Is Mark Carney trying to override the constitution of the provinces? One economy instead of 13? What the heck does that mean?
In addition, initiatives such as the middle class tax cut. But there will be a budget in the fall.
Abigail Beeman, CTV News.
Yep.
To that point, with your economic experience as a former governor of two central banks,
Yep.
why not present Canadians with a budget at the very first opportunity?
Well, this is in fact based on my economic experience. There is not much value in my judgment, and it's considered judgment, and it's judgment based on experience, that there is not much value in trying to rush through a budget in a very narrow window, 3 weeks, with a new cabinet, effectively a new finance minister, just reappointed, but a new finance minister, rush that through, for example, in advance of the NATO summit, which happens after Parliament rises. So the NATO summit, 23rd, 24th, that is going to be a very important event for the security of Canada, but also it will have fiscal implication. It will have budgetary implications for Canada. That's one example. To have a budget before we substantially advance further our discussions with the Americans with respect to our economic partnership, to have greater clarity around that. I'm not saying we'll have perfect clarity, but to have greater clarity around that. Again, that's another factor. A third factor, one of the things that we emphasized and are working on from the start of this new mandate is improving the efficiency of government spending, looking where we can reduce costs at all possible, and improving the productivity of the public sector. We are launching that those set of initiatives, having greater visibility on that as we prepare a budget. All of those three factors, so defense spending, the economic outlook, including the tariff relationship with the United States and the efficiency, all of those coming together, we will have a much more comprehensive, effective, ambitious, prudent budget in the fall. You do these things right, and that's what we're going to do.
In your opening comments, you mentioned a meeting with the American Vice President.
Yeah.
How did that meeting come about, and what do you hope to discuss today?
It came about. We exchanged texts. We both knew we were going to be here. We agreed to meet, and it's later this afternoon. There's a wide range of issues to be discussed, recognizing the government's responsibilities. I think one of the things that will be top of mind will be the situation in Ukraine, which is very fluid. I met with President Zelensky. The Vatican has begun to play a bit of a role in that as well. It's been a topic of conversation in every single discussion I've had. I expect it will play an important role in the G7 that we will be hosting in a few weeks' time. So that is one of the examples of things we'll discuss. We will also, I'm sure, touch on Canada-U.S. economic relations as well. Thank you.
Sur votre rencontre avec J.D. Vance plus tard aujourd'hui, qu'est-ce qui sera discuté?
Il y aura des discussions, je suis sûr, nous allons discuter la situation en Ukraine. La situation est très fluide, beaucoup d'événements, y compris la participation possible du Vatican dans les discussions pour la paix. Et je suis sûr que malheureusement, la situation probablement sera encore difficile quand le sommet du G7 à Kananaskis se déroulera. Et puis, évidemment, je suis sûr, nous allons discuter les relations économiques par rapport aux États-Unis, le Canada, American Relations. D'accord, merci.
Prochaine question.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Carney. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News. As you prepare to get ready for this meeting with Vice President Vance today, we know that the U.S. is urging Canada to increase defense spending. There are now reports that NATO's chief is calling on NATO members to increase defense spending to 5% by 2032. Are you prepared to do that?
A couple of things. One, the way we look at defense spending is from the perspective of security of Canadians. So first, and in a more dangerous and divided world. So first and foremost, we have signaled and we've started to take serious action, including with over-the-horizon radar and with troop presence, air, land, sea, cyber in the north, but securing Canada's Arctic, securing our borders, greater participation as required with our allies. So all of those are coming together. The question, I've had this discussion with a number of other leaders, G7 leaders just over the last 24 hours, the importance of starting with the outcome, what are we getting, and then working backwards to what it costs, not starting with a number or a percentage that is a cost and then try to figure out how to spend it. That's the exact opposite way of how things should be done. So that's why it's important to have these intensive discussions that we are having with allies, G7 allies, European allies, the Americans, the Australians, and others, so that we're specifying how to get things done, how to accomplish greater security for Canadians. But it goes back to a question that was asked earlier, which is, why don't you have a budget tomorrow? Well, the reason you don't have a budget tomorrow is one of the reasons is you're having those discussions. We are having those discussions and determining what's necessary, how we're going to get there, what the fiscal implications are. All that points to a fall budget. Thank you.
U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to speak to Russian President Vladimir Putin tomorrow, along with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky separately. You just met with Zelensky for the first time face-to-face. Do you believe there is an opening here for peace? And are you expected to speak to Trump following those discussions tomorrow?
Yes. So the first, is there an opening for peace? I'll just say absolutely clearly that President Zelensky has made it very clear that he is open for peace. He agreed to an unconditional, America put on the table a 30-day unconditional ceasefire proposal. Ukraine agreed, the coalition of the willing, of which Canada is a member. We backed it. President Zelensky responded to the opportunity to meet face to face under President Erdogan's leadership, meet face to face with President Putin in Istanbul. He went to Istanbul again in a search for peace. So he's demonstrating the willingness to do that. He absolutely has our backing. There is a path for peace. The obstacle to peace is Putin. The reason we have a war is Putin. The obstacle to peace is very clearly President Putin and Russia's aggression. And President Trump's further engagement with President Putin directly is welcome. Yes, independent of these discussions, I'm sure I will be speaking with the president in the future. Yes.
Do you have a call scheduled with him tomorrow?
I don't have one scheduled. I don't have a call scheduled with the president tomorrow. I'm seeing the vice president today. That's enough. That's enough. I mean, that's enough for me for the moment. Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, Prime Minister Tom Perry with CBC. Is there anything specific that you heard from your G7 allies who you spoke with over the last couple of days that you're going to be taking into Canada and ask us to inform the way you handle that summit?
That's important. Yes, is the short answer. And part of this is reinforcing things. And I said in my opening comments very quickly that Canada has what the world wants. And I'll give a couple of examples of that. There is a very high emphasis that's being placed on energy security, security of critical minerals, security of, I'll call it the intelligence complex, but basically in and around AI, which includes energy, but chips, where data centers, intelligence infrastructure is located, how information is shared and beyond. There is a big focus in and around all of that, and how we are natural partners in developing all aspects of that, and to turn those concepts into very concrete, sustained realities. That's the first thing. And then the second, and so those are discussions in effectively the first day, the first two sessions of the G7, which, if it goes well, will be very intensive discussions, because it's the interface between economics and security, geoeconomics, if I can put it that way, where we can really help each other as the G7 or the G7 plus, if you include other like-minded countries. Australia would be an example there. South Korea would be another example, both of whom we expect to come as in the outreach. I think the last point I would say that just gets reemphasized, which will be a little less at the G7, but obviously much more at NATO, is this point I made earlier, which is about deciding what we're trying to accomplish for the security of our citizens and for our collective security. How do we take the lessons of these terrible wars that are going on, but there are lessons from them about accomplishing security in a way that delivers that security, and then determining how much that costs and how much we should spend, as opposed to inverting things, picking a number and trying to go on a shopping list in order to fill it. We're never going to do that in Canada, and I'm pleased to see that our partners think the same way.
Can I ask you as well, in your discussions, I think Prime Minister Maloney had a sit down with Donald Trump recently. I know that President Zelensky certainly did.
Yep.
Do you compare notes when you're sitting down with your allies about how you interact with the U.S. president? And I guess more broadly, how much, when you're getting together with your allies, how much is the U.S. really taking up the real estate in terms of what you're talking about?
Well, look, I'll answer the second part of that question, which is, I've been involved in international economic issues for 20 plus years, quarter century probably, as a policymaker. And the U.S. always takes up the most real estate. It's the biggest economy, it's the reserve currency, it has the biggest impact on the global economy. It also has the biggest impact on global security. So necessarily, whenever you're talking about bigger issues with allies, the U.S. comes in either explicitly or implicitly to those discussions. That's just a recognition of reality. In terms of, we spend more time, I would say, in terms of the conversation of allies, not trading anecdotes about talking with the president or anything like that, but more about this nexus, if I can put it that way, this link between our economic requirements and security realities, and how, for example, is the trading system going to be restructured given the U.S.'s new positions in a way that's going to make our citizens better off and more secure. And this is our fundamental responsibility, and that takes up the vast amount of time and very specific ways that we can potentially deliver that.
But there's no like swapping war stories about going into the Oval Office?
I wouldn't say that's I wouldn't say that's never happened, but I would say that's not what you do. It's precious time. I had the privilege of spending an hour with Prime Minister Maloney yesterday, and it was all, she's all substance. She's all substance, which is why she's so effective as a leader.
Next question.
Hi, Mr. Carney. Mackenzie Gray with Global News. Do you want house prices to go down in Canada?
I want house prices to be more affordable for Canadians. And let me explain that.
Why couldn't Mark
It
Carney
means a
just
number of
answer
things.
yes to
One,
this
in the very
question?
short term,
It's kind of concerning.
It means getting specific costs out of the price. So for new home buyers, as many people know, and I want everybody to know this, cutting GST on homes, new homes, and ensuring that particularly younger Canadians get the benefit from that. So that's the first thing. The second thing we want is to strip out, and we will do, put in place measures so to strip out, in fact, half the development charges for construction on homes. So again, another measure that in the near term will lower the cost of new term homes, and those lower costs should be passed on to home buyers. The third thing we think needs to happen, and we'll do at scale, is to help develop a much more efficient home building industry in Canada.
Mark Carney's third option has Brookfield written all over it. Modular homes, sound about right?
On a path to a broader doubling of the rate of home growth in Canada. So all of those factors are going to help to improve affordability. The exact level of house prices, of course, is going to be a function of a variety of factors, including where incomes grow. But the key is that we're building new homes, and the purchase of new homes becomes less expensive, without question.
I just want to figure out where you are, because I didn't hear a yes or no there. We did hear a yes or no from Gregor Robertson, though. He said no. So where do you stand on that?
Well, first off, it's not a yes-no question. It's not a yes-no question.
It was for him, though.
Well, I'm answering the questions right now, if I can. Because it's a question which relates to different time horizons, and it relates to different houses. So we are cutting GST on new homes. Okay. So that affects the price of new homes. That affects the cost, is a better way to put it. The all-in cost for people. It's up to $50,000 savings on the average home price. A little more than that, actually, if you look at the greater Toronto area. So there's significant savings for people. Measures to reduce development charges over the course of the next 5 years. For the next 5 years, cut those development charges in half. Those lower the cost for those homes that are built over the course of the next 5 years. Those savings will be passed on to people. The overall level of housing prices, though, is not so that amount of activity is not enough necessarily to affect the overall level of house price. It does affect those types of homes and people who can buy those types of homes. Once we increase, as a country, the rate of home building, then that is going to make home prices much lower than they otherwise would be. But that's a medium-term effect, and so that depends where house prices would have otherwise been at that point. So, look, the economy. It'd be lovely if we could always give very simple yes/no questions, up/down question answers to economy. But we're talking about time horizons. What the core issue is, the core issue for younger Canadians, for all Canadians, is that the level of house prices goes down relative to their incomes. So the affordability goes up for them. And both in the medium term and the longer term, that's what we're looking to do. Thank you.
Last question.
Eric Reguly with the Globe and Mail.
Good to see you.
Good to see you
I
too,
came
Prime
all this
Minister.
way to see
Yes,
you, Mr.
I just
Reguly.
live down the road, huh?
Okay. Not bad.
Not like this. I have a defense question. The F-35 contracts under
Yes.
review. First part of that question is, when will this review be completed? Do you expect? And second, do you see any merit, Mr. Prime Minister, in splitting the contract between the F-35 and a European plane, if only to get into the European supply chain with defense R&D,
Yeah.
just the pivot to Europe
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
Okay, so I'll give you, in terms of, the review will take as long as it takes, is the short answer. And it will weigh factors, very much a value for money question, but also industrial policy questions. I'm going to say it explicitly like that. How much of the value added of the plane is created in Canada? Also considerations about the longer term operating costs of those planes. And very importantly, as with any military, virtually any, I should say, military procurement, interoperability. How well does it work with our allies and how effective it is? And there are many things to recommend the F-35, to be clear, in those regards, including a potential willingness of the principal manufacturer to have more of the manufacturing and development in Canada for the back end of the contract, okay? So that's one aspect. And then we weigh it against alternatives, including the Saab Griffin would be a specific example. And looking at value for money, but those other factors, interoperability, longer term maintenance costs, the costs of running two planes at the same time. So a very comprehensive, deliberate review, but a sensible review when you're spending billions and billions of dollars. And to your second part of the question, which is, it will make sense to diversify our defense partnerships, particularly as we spend considerably more money on defense. As you, I'm sure, know, about 75 cents on the dollar of all our capital defense spending goes to the United States. Well, we'd like to see more of that be in Canada, and we'd also like to diversify our partnerships for just obvious reasons of it's prudent to diversify your partnerships when there are questions of sovereignty at issue. Now, we have an opportunity now, and we've been pursuing this, and it was part of my discussions with, for example, President von der Leyen last evening, again, and with the major countries in Europe, if I can put it that way, possibility to become a partner of what's called Rearm Europe, which I'm sure you're following, which is the big increase in defense procurement. So if we become a partner of that, then we are effectively inside the European fence, as they are in ours, in terms of defense partnership. And that's independent of the F-35 decision. So if I can bring those strands together, look, very deliberate, prudent, looking at all factors, review on the F-35. We'll take as long as we need, not any more. But the general premise of your question, which is it desirable to diversify our partners? Absolutely. Are we pursuing that? Absolutely. Particularly with Europe and the UK. Are we making tremendous progress on that? Absolutely.
Not necessarily on
but
fighter
not
jets.
necessarily on the fighter jets. That's
Okay.
my point. So it's
Okay.
a much bigger set of issues that are there.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Vous aimez fin à la séance de questions. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Okay. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. Can I go back that way?
Canadian Joe Biden is lost in Rome. Is he actually the Prime Minister, or does he also have people telling him what to do?